Disturbing news out of Afghanistan as President Hamid Karzai released 65 Afghan prisoners who, according to the U.S. military, are directly linked to the killing or wounding of 32 coalition soldiers. After more than 12 years and over 2,000 U.S. troop deaths, Karzai says Afghan policy is of no concern to the United States.
If the Afghan judicial authorities decide to release a prisoner, it is of no concern to the U.S. and should be of no concern to the U.S. And I hope that the United States will stop harassing Afghanistan's procedures and judicial authority, and I hope that the United States will now begin to respect Afghan sovereignty.
Last night, George Will mocked the idea that these prisoners will lead a peaceful life upon their release.
The Afghan government says these gentlemen have gone to their homes, presumably to wash the car, mow the lawn, and start a small business. Now, if you believe that, then it's no concern of us, but we don't think that's really going to happen. If Mr. Karzai is so concerned about his sovereignty, there's a large, like 70% American majority that wishes to give him all the sovereignty he wants by leaving. I count myself in that cohort.
Fox News national security analyst K.T. McFarland thinks that Karzai is a traitor who does not deserve to leave the country with American treasure.
He's been a traitor. He's betrayed us. And frankly, I think that the Taliban isn't going to buy what he's trying to offer. And so what should we do? Well, Karzai is going to show up with a plan B. His plan B is he's going to have bags of gold, American gold, and he's going to try to get on the last helicopter out of Kabul. I don't think we ought to let him on that helicopter.
All right, we're going to kick this around and then get to another topic. Bob, do you think that Karzai, in a way, knows that the United States is leaving, therefore he's decided to try to appeal to his base, which is in his country, saying the United States doesn't respect our sovereignty? That probably helps him there. But do you think that he is actually just trying to look beyond the United States?
Well, first of all, he's not running for re-election. And the other people who are running for re-election all want to sign the security agreement between the United States and Afghanistan. He does not want to. So, yes, he's appealing to his base. His base is the Taliban and opium dealers. And the fact of the matter is, we put him in power in 2001. This guy was a crook to begin with. He was a crook throughout. K.T. McFarland is exactly right. He's been stealing American gold. Forget American treasure and deaths. That's a lot of that blood's on his hands. To release these people is treasonous, and the son of a bitch ought to be sent into the Hague and tried for war crimes.
Well,
that's by a soft
The
comment.
position of the United States is that they still want and need to sign this agreement. And President Obama has said that there will be several thousand troops there from the United States to try to keep the peace. But is that even possible in this scenario?
I would think not. And during that one of those sound bites, someone from the Five gave the finger to Hamid Karzai. I'm not going to say who it is, but Hamid Karzai continues to give the finger back to us. Bob's right. He personally stole hundreds of millions of dollars U.S. aid that's going into his bank accounts. His brother's known opium dealer, warlords.
The biggest.
One of the big, yeah, if not the biggest. Okay, so look at it this way. We've spent nearly $1 trillion there over 12 years. There are about 30 million people in Afghanistan. Most of them live outside of the major cities. Most of them live in kind of villages and whatnot. Very poor people. If we were to spend that $1 trillion and give it to the people of Afghanistan, it'd be about $100,000 per three-person family. $100,000 per three-person. Can you imagine how much they would love us?
That would be quite a stimulus program.
And they're still living in poverty, and they still kind of hate us. So, listen, whatever we've done it wrong. Let's get out, let's pull out, and let's I think that's right.
Let me get Andrea and Greg's take on this, because I caught this debate last night between Brett Stevens and Tucker Carlson. They were on with Bill O'Reilly last night talking about the purpose and the reason that we originally went to Afghanistan.
He's spitting in our face, as you said. In return, what? Like, what's the upside exactly? Afghan girls are going to school. That's great, but that's not in our strategic interest. Here's the reality.
We're dealing with the real world.
So conservatives who say the federal government is too disorganized to run a healthcare website are simultaneously arguing that it has the power to create a civil society in a Stone Age country?
Look,
it's ridiculous.
We should not have been nation building in Afghanistan. Our job there wasn't, to build roads and schools. Our job there was to make sure that the Taliban wouldn't come back to power.
So, Greg, I want to get your take on that, because that is the original purpose was make sure that the Taliban doesn't have a safe haven from which to launch terrorist operations. If we leave now, do you think that we are going back on our word to try to keep that from happening?
I don't know. I think Obama should punish Karzai by getting him to enroll in Obamacare. The first thing. These guys could be misunderstood goat herders. We don't know that, these 65 people. The great news is Eric Holder is going to make sure they can vote. And they're going to get driver's license in New York and California. So that's the upside.
But they won't need those to vote.
The big picture, okay. Afghanistan is a horrible, horrible place. It's the crazy ex-girlfriend that Russia warned us about. USSR in the late 70s were going like, why did I get into this relationship? This is awful. And then they're like, they get out of it and they're going, don't go there. She's nuts. She's going to burn all of your ties. Everything's going to, it's going to be attractive at first, but it's going to be a mess. And then what do? We go ahead and we hook up with the craziest ex-girlfriend of them all.
Not to mention the Brits in the 19th century. Same thing.
What if that was the least craziest girlfriend? I mean, what if that was
jewelry, and then she throws it back in our face?
She may have been the least craziest one, Andrea. And I think that one of the sad things is I think our troops have done a tremendous job with the resources that they had in dealing with the Afghans that they've had to deal with. And I think they should be proud of what they attempted to achieve there. And I hope that all of those gains haven't been lost. But what do you think?
I think it was naive from day one to turn a place like Afghanistan into Philadelphia on the eve of a constitutional convention with Hamid Karzai as George Washington. I've said this before. They are a bunch of goat herders. Why would we create a country that's somehow going to mirror our values when just this week their culture, the Afghan parliament, moved legislation that prevents relatives from testifying in domestic violence cases, which is covering up for abusers. Now, how are they going to run some kind of civil society? They can barely speak their language. They hate the United States for the most part. So I do think it was naive to try and promote democracy. I think the minute that Osama's terrorists slipped out of Tora Bora and went into Pakistan, we should have said, okay, we'll see you later. The next time you harbor terrorists that are plotting an attack against the United States, we will come in and we will flatten you. We will turn you into a parking lot. I, frankly, don't give a crap if the Taliban occupies Afghanistan. However, if there are people that are there trying to plot another terror attack, we go in, we wipe them out, and we leave. Enough spending blood and treasure, human lives, money on a country that hates us, that will never be us.
And by the way, where was Karzai during the war, American war? He was in Pakistan as a refugee, then the United States. He never was in that country until we put him in. But leaving that aside, this guy on O'Reilly,
that's entirely fair.
Okay, but the guy on O'Reilly said we're not in there to build roads and schools. Of course, we built roads and schools. We built a lot of them.
But part of that was also the people that agree with the surge, which is that you have to switch. You can't just go in and leave a vacuum.
No, I think that was a good idea. I think that's good. To suggest that we didn't do it is not a fair thing to what we did do.
Okay, let's get to one other topic because this is a fun one. So the Obama administration is dealing with a little bit of egg on its face because nominees that they have made for ambassadorships couldn't really pass the test when they went to the Senate. Let's take a look at Jon Stewart's take on it.
The ambassadors. Appointed by our Democratic president. Surely he chooses them then on their merits.
Jonas, have you been to Norway?
Have you been to Argentina? Senator, I haven't had the opportunity yet to be there. I've traveled pretty extensively around the world, but I haven't yet had a chance.
Barbara, I take it you've been to Iceland?
Sir, I've not had the privilege yet.
Is there a rule that ambassadors can't have set foot in the country they're going to ambassador?
So every president nominates people that have helped them to be in ambassadorships, but usually, Eric, even if you have a rich donor, they still need to be briefed on the basics.
Yeah, you would think, like Stuart points out, hey, maybe just send them there just to see what the place looks like before they're going to find out where they're going to be the ambassador to. It's one of the more ridiculous, and both sides do it, more ridiculous things I think that we do as a politic is send high donors, the people who raise money to get you in office, give them cushy ambassadorships. I mean, it's just insanity.
Bob, you almost got a cushy ambassadorship in your life.
Yeah,
why'd you turn that down?
They didn't do the background check. If they had, I'd been in real trouble. But if I could just say, when you say all presidents do it, with all due respect to Dana, I have been trying to be very nice to George Bush on this show. But can I point out that two very important allies are Canada and Australia. Bush had appointed a South Carolina state legislator who gave $200,000 to his campaign to Canada, and to Australia he appointed a lobbyist for R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company. Now, I mean, it goes both ways. I mean, you can make this case all you want. Every president, as you say, does it. You can always find these little nitpicks. And by the way, to suggest that this guy, they want him to say something negative about the country they're going into is something they shouldn't be doing.
But they should have some. They should have some. They should probably have some knowledge about that. They couldn't even name a national interest.
I couldn't
they couldn't even say what would the U.S. national interest be. But how about health, peace, and prosperity? I mean, that's like a standard answer.
Yeah, Dana, why should our ambassadors expect to be briefed on the countries they're going to? And we have a president who wasn't briefed on what was happening at the IRS, didn't know that the security in Benghazi needed security. He had no experience being the president of the United States as a community organizer. So, hey, what does it matter if you just nominate some rich guy over there from Nantucket to go to a country he's never been to? What could possibly go wrong? Because everything's going really well with the United States.
Greg, does this just prove that you can't buy good help anymore?
Perhaps. You know, the only expertise needed to become an ambassador is bundling. That's it. Reagan had jelly beans on his desk. These are Obama's jelly beans. These are the gift cards he gives out for the bundling. Who deserves this job? It's people who have had tough jobs. I don't understand why, if you get a Purple Heart, you should also get this job. It should be a military reward, not a reward for getting somebody into office.
But you recognize that they all do that, the big bundles.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
But Obama did say that he was going to try to increase the ratio to be 70% of State Department civil servants.
Go ahead, Greg. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just want to point out this thing with the Afghanistan piece and with this piece. Foreign policy is really, really hard. You get the impression that President Obama has a distaste for it, and he treats the presidency like a part-time job that supports his work as a progressive activist in order to remake the world. He always has better, more emotionally relevant things to do, like tweeting encouragement to a gay athlete, which is important. But I would think this stuff is a little bit more important.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Maybe we don't know. Do we know how much an ambassador gets paid? I mean, because some of these ambassadorships, these people are raising,
about $180,000,
$400,000 or $500,000. You bundle $500,000, and then you're going to get paid $200,000 a year for the next. I mean,
they get to pick their own artwork. Did you know that?
It's not even their own money.
But a lot of ambassadors. Well, this is going to sound kind of elitist, but I do know a lot of ambassadors do end up spending some of their own money, especially on their own travel, and some ambassadors have even waived their salary, but certainly that doesn't happen.
Clinton
you don't get rich by turning down money.
Clinton, what's her name to Paris?
Broker deals and reach out to
She put about $1 million into it.
How are you supposed to broker deals and reach out to people in a country if you've never been there? I mean, speaking of the language should be a minimum, but you've never been there?
I want to be ambassador to Middle Earth.
That would be awesome. You would be a very good one.
I think I would.
And you could donate to my campaign, and I'll make that happen.
Excellent.
Okay, ahead next on the 5.